The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by Lucky Bastard Distillers, Saskatchewan's premier distillery, and by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, brewed in the heart of Regina. Welcome!
Holy shit!
That's looking up going to the Three Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only golf podcast. I'm Joel Gasson with John Fraser as usual, as we have a little bit to get to, as I would say the Banjo Bowl more or less went as expected. Maybe not entirely as expected, but leaned a lot closer to the expected than unexpected. As you can tell by John's snickering. So we'll talk about how, even though the Riders got their asses whipped, to the point where I think I heard Jim Ross yelling to stop the damn match.
I couldn't decide between that and the and the Simpsons. Stop!
Yeah.
He's already dead.
Yeah, no, I think Jim Ross is more appropriate in this case because the Bombers were Triple H with a sledgehammer, and Jim was just having none of it.
Stop the damn match! Yeah, you can never go wrong with JR. Oh my god.
JR's pure disdain for Triple H is just, it put him over so much harder as a heel because of it too. It was phenomenal.
Oh, it works so well. All the Attitude Era days, the constant memes you and I send back and forth to each other. Just we need more Jim Ross appreciation on this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, the Riders, they got dismantled. Maybe not overly surprising, but a little bit. So we'll talk a bit about that and how, despite that, we're not really that concerned because, well, we'll get into reasons. We'll talk about how, despite all of that, I don't think any of it falls on Jake Delbagala, and he should remain the starting quarterback, and it feels like the Riders feel the same. And we'll talk a little bit about the game this week against the Elks, and how it'll be a little different than the last couple of times those two teams played. Before then, though, well, I guess technically after the game against the Elks first, John and I are doing a little thing this week.
We
with
are.
a couple other meatballs and some other people related to CFL Twitter and whatnot. We're apparently going to be golfing, where I believe John may be the only actual golfer amongst us that is taking part in this so-called golf tournament.
Yeah. One of our regulars, one of the 7 listeners to this here podcast, Dave, and I don't know if Joe listens. I hope he does. But I always like the Twitter hashtag Joe ruins something. It's always a good go-to. But they're not ruining anything. They're actually putting together a little golf tournament. The Stadnick Invitational starts ungodly early on Saturday, and actually we're going to be using it as a fundraiser for CFL Fans Fight Cancer. Everybody I've spoken to, and actually it's cool, there's some people that are adopting teams that 25 cents a stroke on your score is going to go towards CFL Fans Fight Cancer. They do some great fundraising stuff, mostly around Grey Cup. But the more I talk to people, and I'm by no means saying I'm great. Like a bad day for me is mid 90s, a good day, a regular day is mid 80s, and a great day I break 80. But talking to everybody's like, wow, look at you, Mr. Fancy Pants, with your yardage apps and your breaking 90. I'm like, And the other thing, too, is it's so goddamn early in the morning.
Is it? I don't know. I don't find 8 a.m. that bad for golf.
But we got to be there for 7:20. But it's not okay. In terms of golf, it's not bad at all. It's a great day to golf. It's supposed to be a beautiful day on Saturday. But what I mean is the great equalizer when I usually play with my buddies is they just get me really drunk. And then I'm dog shit. Right? I don't feel like that's going to happen at 8 in the morning.
I mean, you never know, I guess.
I mean, you are my cart partner.
I mean, maybe we don't know. Maybe extremely sleepy John isn't very good either. I don't know.
Oh no, I'm great. Especially I've had your coffee machine, and I'll be able to sleep in your spare bedroom, where I won't have kids coming in the middle of the night. Maybe just your dog. And Mo is less disruptive than any of my children when they jump into bed. So I will probably have, much like the last time I stayed at your place, and I woke up and said to you and your wife, that might be the greatest sleep I've had in my life.
Yeah, well.
So it's I'm hoping that is much the same, and we can get out nice and early. And of course, always got to be safe though. Got to have the safe breakfast. You've got the incredible espresso machine, so I'm already looking forward to that. And some bagels. We got to make sure. I'm glad that you're cooking because I don't want there to be any poop incidents on the course.
No, I mean we're going to keep it simple because yes, it's a little too early for me to get up and actually like make something. So we just have like a stash of Costco bagels that
I can't go wrong with Costco bagel.
I'll probably be out of what I'm eating this week, so I'll pull some out for the weekend and we'll be fine there. That's just the easiest way to go about it. Then yeah, obviously some snacks on the course and whatnot, but
got to get a dog at the turn.
Yeah.
Like that's the number one thing is the dog at the turn, and that early in the round, you got to have a rattler. Like little rattler, little dog at the turn, and it's gonna be a great day. We're gonna raise a couple bucks. If you want to get in on the donations, if you want to adopt me or Joel, and this is probably the most arrogant thing I've ever said about my golf game. If you're cheap, you can adopt me. If you're feeling brave, you're feeling spendy, go ahead and adopt Joel Gasson.
Potentially.
Oh,
I mean, compared to some other people on this, I have golfed in my life. And there was a time I golfed regularly. So, like, I'm not sitting here saying confident that I'm going to win this thing and I'm going to go low or anything. I've never broken 90 in my life. But there are people who are saying they shoot in the 120s and 130s.
That's fair.
And I'm generally, when I was golfing regularly, which has been a few years, was kind of in that high 90s, low 100s range.
Right.
So I'm not quite in that 130s. So if those guys shoot in that area, I'm fairly confident I'm not going to be the worst one out there.
Okay, so what we're saying is you can save your bucks by donating based on how you or I shoot. Mm-hmm. And if you want to get real spicy, how about our fellow meatballs on our team at the Piffles podcast? That I hear there could be some high scoring. So if you're feeling extra spendy, the betting money is on Saf and Greg from Piffles, who will be part of our foursome known as the Meatballs. Mm-hmm. We have official team names, and yes, we are in fact the Meatball Bunch.
Who's bringing the Cheetos?
Oh, I bet you Greg. Oh, we gotta have Cheetos at the turn. Do we get Cheetos at the turn and do a photo op?
I mean, probably.
That has to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the Cheeto dust will be all over your hands, and then you won't be able to grip your clubs, and then you'll just have an awful back nine, and then you'll come not first.
That's fair. That sounds about right. That is, Cheetos are generally something I better pack an extra towel.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah.
For Cheetos, and in case I win,
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think actually, as excited as you are to show up and play in this thing and hang out with everybody, and we have some other plans for the rest of the day afterwards, I've never actually heard you more giddy than you were told about the spreadsheet to keep track of everyone's score. Because, I mean, they have these things called scorecards at the golf course, but apparently that's not good enough around here.
No. Oh, no. Joe has cooked up one of the most beautiful spreadsheets you've ever seen in your life. Like I got looking at the back end of this thing, and the formulas like automatically calculates birdies, live tracking of a leaderboard, like we're on the Puga Tour. Like, 6 to midnight watching this thing. Like
there should almost be like, I don't know. That should almost be like, there should be live tracking of that on Twitter or some kind of website or something.
I think the doc is open.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it is. So people, or we could screenshot it or whatnot. So like,
yeah. I believe it's open too, because I saw it on the Stadnik Invitational Twitter account, and I just clicked on it and opened, and I wasn't invited to do that, so it was there.
But at the very least, we'll be able to recap the Invitational on next week's episode too.
Absolutely.
So we can see like, and I do definitely, I do enjoy obviously tunes while we're golfing. No country music, which led to a awkward situation last time I went golfing. It was a end staff event, and I was paired with our owner, Josh. 10 out of 10 human. Love working for Josh. He's got speakers and everything on his golf cart. It's really cool, and he played nothing but country music. But it's like, you're paying for this, and you signed my paychecks.
Yeah.
I can't really bitch about this. I'm just gonna be far away from the court, from the sound. But we've been promised things like S Club 7, maybe some B44 on there as well. We'll have a nice variety. We'll have a nice variety of some golf tunes.
Absolutely. One thing we will not be doing after the Stadnik is going to Subway.
Oh God, no.
And for some reason,
or before.
Well, I mean, I don't even think they're open at like 6:30 in the morning, so that helps.
Some of them serve breakfast now.
Yeah, but I don't think they're open that early. At least not in Regina, as far as I can remember.
Fair. There was one I went to once in Rochester, New York, that was open that early.
There was one in Grand Prairie that was 24 hours.
Oh God.
I don't know if it still is or not, but it was at one point.
The one I went to in Rochester, I almost started making my own sub because the person working there had clearly had a night the night before, was passed out in the back.
Yeah.
Like, not medical emergency. Like, I could hear them snoring, but like, yeah. So that's another great Subway tale. But no, we will not be visiting a Subway no matter what. We got too much on the go. I cannot shit my pants.
No, I mean, maybe we'll stop in at Sub Express because they're a great local chain. But for some reason, this completely slipped our radar. We had noticed a while ago that they were for sale.
Right.
And apparently it sold like half a month ago.
Okay, that would make sense, though, because I was like, I was just coming back from holidays.
Yeah, so it was like August 24th is apparently when it got sold to this Work Capital, no relation to Nathan Rourke or Curtis Rourke or any of those Rourkes. I believe I'm pronouncing it right. It's Roak, so I could be butchering that name completely.
Let's call it Rock.
Yeah, it might be Rock.
Just so nobody thinks that we're, also on the Nathan Rourke to the New York Jets hype train.
And so they own other fine chains. Speaking of shit splitting, Arby's, Dunkin' Donuts, and Wild Wings.
See, I've heard Dunkin' Donuts from my American friends has absolutely gone downhill since they bought it.
Yeah, probably.
Like, it kind of like how Tim Hortons, you can get a credit card there now, but they can't bake your donuts fresh.
Yes, you can get a credit card. I've seen something about a line of clothing. But yes, the still ass coffee and terrible donuts. Yeah, apparently they sold for $9.6 billion to this group.
Holy!
They were looking for 10, so they didn't get all the way there, but I guess 96% of it is pretty good.
That's real good.
And yeah, surprising amount. Looks like they're into streamlining and closing locations and sort of becoming more efficient and whatnot because, yeah, Subway grew way too fast, way too quickly at one point. By the fact that even in this province, there's like seemingly one in every corner in some areas.
I think there's 10 in Saskatoon. Like even more than A&W.
Yeah.
Research time. Continue talking. I'm researching.
Anyway, just felt like it was an important piece of update for us to give to talk about. Hopefully within that, since they've already spent $9.6 billion on the brand, maybe they could spend a little bit and, wash their lettuce or something.
Oh, holy shit. There's more than 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 18 Subways in Saskatoon.
It's like one for every hole.
Oh, but it would do bad things to your bottom. Oh, God. The thing that terrifies me more is like, thinking to myself, like, okay, maybe they would get bought by somebody who would, actually go through the logistics of washing the lettuce. Because that, according to somebody smarter than both of us, our curling buddy / curling coach, Jay Price, who's actually like an agriculture engineer, some fancy real job like that, he says that's the problem. To streamline costs, they stop washing the lettuce. So you're supposed to do it at the store. But people don't do it at the store, and that's why your innards get ruined. So them streamlining it, maybe now it'll be suspect spinach as well?
Hopefully not. I mean, wouldn't a central washing location make more sense? But
you would think.
I don't know.
But like, I don't know. Like, when I first made like many podcasts ago, when I first pointed out that the lettuce gives you the poops, I thought I was the only one because I have terrible guts. And wow, to find out it was like, oh, that's a lot of people. There's 9 in Regina, as I'm just looking right now. That was much easier to count because 18 was a lot. Like I opened up the Google Maps.
It's like 100% more,
twice as much. And I'm not even drunk yet.
No.
Oh, that's a lot of Subways. Okay, now I'm like finding out which random small towns have subways now.
Oh god, all of them probably.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like
wow.
it's in the range of like Boston Pizza in terms of you can find one in just about every community.
There's one in Southie,
Yeah.
which I hear has really good rink burgers. But I digress. Enough about our enough about the number of places that you can get lettuce that'll absolutely ruin your insides.
Yeah. The Riders, their insides weren't ruined this time, and they still lost the Banjo Bowl.
Worse than
Worse
they did.
even. So we'll get into that, Jake Delagala, and a whole lot more. But for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, as we make that great transition, what is in the glass this week?
This week, Joel, as I figure we'll be consuming ample amounts of Pile of Bones product together on Saturday, went with something different. Very excited to see at my local Sobeys liquor store, 88 Brewing starting to bring some products in out of Alberta. I'm having the Night Gallery Hazy Pale tonight. It's an easy one. It's only 5.5. And out of everything 88 makes that I've tried, their second best beer, and that's only because Wave Pool is a 10 out of 10. Night Gallery is like a solid like 9.2. Like this is just
it
an
dropped since we were talking before the show. Interesting.
Well, I know, but I gotta give some room. It's a 9.5. It's definitely a 9.5. Like it is up there. Like in terms of beers that score above a 9, like this one's at a 9.5. Obviously the white IPA, the double white IPA. Wave Pool, and there's another. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Surely something from Lake of the Woods. Like, I mean, the way you obsess over them.
Oh yeah. Basically everything from Lake. Yeah, Sneaky Peach is a 9.7. Blueberry Ale is a 9.6. It scores lower because it gets you drunk really fast. That's kind of Nautical Disaster. The dry hopped IPA is also a 10 out of 10. So there's only 3 10 out of 10 beers in my life: Nautical Disaster, a Wave Pool, and the Pile of Bones White IPA. But I can tell you, Night Gallery's up there in that top like beers of all time tier for me.
Fair enough. For me, another one that's up there for me, at least one of my favorites, the Pile of Bones Black IPA.
Yeah, which doesn't taste like you'd expect it to.
I mean, I had one a couple of episodes ago, so we talked about it recently. But yeah, it's still just as fresh and as delicious as ever. And some interesting beers coming up from Pile of Bones. They have their new Spud Light out, which is exactly what you think it is. Pretty much nice, light, easy drinking beer made with some potato, which should make it nice and dry. And they also have a new, like a citrus Kivek, forget how you pronounce it, coming out. It's called Freshly Squeezed. You'll find that one out on shelves soon as well. This light, fresh, and easy drinking on that one as well.
There's a Subway in Sioux Lookout, Ontario. So sorry, I'm like just like, oh my God, there's a Subway in the home of Colin Hodgson, Red Lake, Ontario, and that's about as isolated as you get. Wow, sorry, I'm like, okay, I gotta close that. I'm gonna twiddle through Google Maps and just find random subways. I'll do that later. Do that at bedtime.
Yeah, maybe that'll be a quest for another day. Maybe it'll be an Ask John Anything of where is the most isolated subway that you can find.
All right, Dave, Jock, Greg, Grammy, everybody. Somebody remember that for the next Rider Bye Week here.
The Riders essentially had a bye week last week.
Oh boy,
as they traveled to Winnipeg for the annual Banjo Bowl. As much as the team doesn't want us to call it that, I'm going to continue to call it that. Most people do. I understand.
Everybody does. Like it's like I don't get it. Like
I can understand it to a degree, but I think for the most part, the sort of origin we've all kind of moved on from. Like, sure, at the time, and it was said in jest, and what was said was maybe still a little over the line from Troy Westwood all those years ago, and I can understand that, but I mean, if it's the Banjo Bowl, to me it would imply then that the banjo applies to both teams.
Yes!
Not just one. So really, it's self-deprecating humor of Manitobans as well, because really we're all in the same pot here in the prairies. So realistically.
The stupidest thing is, if you go to the Banjo Bowl now, like I was at the first couple of Banjo Bowls, if you go there now, like there's more people wearing blue and gold that are dressed up like hillbillies than you get people from Regina. Like it's a fun, cool atmosphere, and I get the team. I get them not wanting to call it the Banjo Bowl. That's totally fine. But to imply that anybody here in Saskatchewan, other than a man with tiny, tiny legs who screams into a microphone for a living, doesn't want to call it the Banjo Bowl, I've never met anybody that doesn't want to. Like, it's like you said, like now, like it's so far gone that like they have to give history lessons on the TSN panel as to what started the Banjo Bowl, right? Like Milt Stiegel's talking about it, and he was at practice and all this, and yeah, like just have fun with it. It's dumb, it's chaotic. There's a friggin' Mayo Bowl in the States. Come on, like.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you know, it helps them market the game, which is never a bad thing. Even when the Bombers are absolute dog shit, it gets people wound up and excited for at least one game a year in the city of Winnipeg to guarantee to sell out, because it's become a thing rather than just a Labor Day rematch.
Right, and that's exactly it. You market one game middle of the season when the weather's still nice, that you kind of make it. And it's funny that the CFL's basically been doing this with Labor Day weekend before all these other leagues. How like the NBA is talking about an in-season tournament.
Yeah.
To like spice up the dog days of January. And the NHL's looking at doing something. Not that they'll ever get it together, right? But like
the NHL's talking about doing an international tournament in February every few years.
Huh.
If only one of those existed somewhere. Anyway.
If only the fact that Crosby and McDavid have never played together internationally yet. But I digress. This is not. We might be a golf podcast.
We will not be a hockey podcast.
Right. We will occasionally be a curling podcast. We will never be a hockey podcast. Do not fear about that, my friends. But yeah, it's just you're right. Like it's one of those things that it's the same way the Labor Day Classic always sells out, no matter how dog water the riders are.
Yep.
You know, or Calgary or Edmonton. Like it's just. It's a cool way that the CFL has essentially elevated their own games and elevated the product and making sure that you're getting bums in seats and eyeballs on the TV in the middle of the season, right? So
yes, it's at least Labor Day has reached the point where even TSN, who is trying to do things as cheaply as possible this year, puts some money into those games on Labor Day weekend. To the point where it's very obvious the following week that they do not. But anyway,
as you alluded to in your article on 3 Down Nation, there's the plug for you. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like just gushing over the drone cam for field goals they had in Calgary.
Yeah,
like how cool was that on Labor Day?
Well, and it's interesting because the drone stuff. Now I know we're really getting into the stuff that our listeners want to hear. Well, maybe Dave, he likes the cable cams. The drone stuff, generally speaking, is used for like sceneries, like the set shots of the stadium and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of cool to see it used as during the actual game. I believe there was actually a little bit of one of the plays was, I believe, video reviewed in Calgary, and it included that angle of the play, which was kind of cool.
Oh, cool.
It reminded me of the game in Halifax where they had this camera on top of the dorm, and you got the all 22 essentially from there, which is great.
Fun fact on that, and I meant to tell you this. While I was on holidays and Touchdown Atlantic happened, one of my really good friends, one of my closest buddies, a long time, was on the dome crew for that game.
Okay.
And it was the camera guy's idea to shoot it up there.
Of course it would be. TSN wouldn't have come up with that themselves.
I mean, he had the full support. Well, and it was a Dome camera guy and Dome's idea, and Dome made it happen. It wasn't anybody at the 3-letter going, hey, stick a guy up there. It was somebody going, hey, this would be cool. Brian, can we make this work? And they did. So
nice.
A little fun tidbit there.
Good for them. So you can tell by our conversation about broadcasting right now that we are deeply concerned about the state of the Saskatchewan Roughriders following that 51-6 loss.
Which surprises me. Like I had a chance to. I normally am not one to listen to post-game shows.
No.
Mostly because one of them is unlistenable half the time. I mean, the other one with Jamie and Daryl and Belton is great, but I was surprised at not the calmness of, because you and I both, I mean, you know Jamie better than I, but like Jamie and I is not a panic hot take artist, right? No. Nor is Belton, nor is Daryl, nor is anybody really over at Ralco these days. But the fact that they just kind of went, yeah, okay, we're just going to carpet, you know the word I'm going for. The fact that they just said that and the listeners agreed was the thing that shocked me. Because, like, Jamie came on all calm, like, just throw that one in the garbage. And Belton's like, you're right, it was terrible, but here's a great barbecue recipe. And Daryl's just like, yep, get rid of it. for them. And then the listeners, I thought, oh God, the listeners are going to be phoning in, wanting like Dickinson fired and everybody cut. Dickerson, right?
Dickerson.
And there was some talk about the O-line, and the O-line was not good.
They were missing 2 of their 5 starters, so yeah.
Exactly, and I think it was Nye or Belton that made the point that of the 5 guys on the field in the Banjo Bowl, 1 was maybe an expected starter for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so yeah, I mean, I did laugh though because I had to work that day, and I showed up at my real job in my Bombers jersey with a Bombers golf shirt underneath, and of course my Sergio jersey. But when I was in front of customers, what I would do is I'd hang up my jersey on the wall and just wear an ends pullover. So somebody booked me an appointment right for 2:00. And it took a while. Like, it was just somebody had lots of questions on their deal, and unlike other car dealerships, we don't just glaze over that. We show you how much your interest rate's going to be in the price and all that kind of stuff, right? So about half an hour later, I turn on my computer, I turn the game back on, and when my appointment started, it was 3-0 Riders. It was 21-3 by the time that I was done with that appointment. So I knew it was going to be a good day.
Yeah, like I think if you watch the game from the start and you kind of watch the whole thing, I think off the very top, like the very first drive was actually quite promising. Now, granted, it was likely a 2-and-out if not for a penalty, but I was actually impressed by the fact that Jake Delgado and the offense managed to march down the field. Yeah. And I believe had they hit Keon Schaefer-Baker with that touchdown, had that throw been made, it's a different game.
100%.
Do the Riders still lose? Probably. Do they lose quite so badly? No. I think there's some confidence on offense. The crowd has calmed down a little bit. The Bombers are still going to come out mad. They're still going to do their thing, and they probably still go on to win, but maybe it's more like that first game of the year where it was like 45-24 or whatever it was.
Right, where they eventually went Death Star mode, but it took a while to get there.
Yeah, like they kind of went back and forth for a while until the Bombers just outclassed them a little bit. That's probably where it would have gone, and that would have been fine. Like ultimately, yeah, I think most people expected the Riders to lose. I honestly think most people, I believe the Bombers are 8.5-point favorites or something, so pretty much everyone I saw was picking the Bombers to cover that spread even. So I think there was, generally speaking, there's an understanding of, okay, even though they won Labor Day, they know, we've talked about this, the Banjo Bowl is generally the better team wins.
Yep.
And it's generally a very tough game for the Riders to win, even when they're good. So the fact that the Bombers won, I don't think surprised anyone. I think the fact that it was over so quickly, maybe a lot of people kind of got over it quicker and just went about with their day. And maybe that helped sort of with the mood. And I think in the grand picture of things, as we talk about it now, I mean, they're at 6-6, which I think if you told Rider fans at the start of the season, after the Labor Day Banjo Bowl duo, the team is going to be 6-6 heading into the final third of the season, 2 games up still on the Calgary Stampeders for the third playoff spot in the West. I think most would be pretty happy with that situation. So
no, absolutely. And just sorry to cut you off a bit, Gas, but I think the mentality too of the Bombers had a big part of playing in this.
Oh, they were total Death Star. They did what they did to the BC Lions. Like after the Lions won that first game against the Bombers, everyone's like, "Oh, the Bombers! Ooh, the Bombers! What's wrong with them?" And then they just came out and actually absolutely piss kicked the Lions the second time around. Well,
that's it.
And TSN tried to make it a thing in that game of, "Ooh, the Bombers!" Like, no. The difference was this time around, the Bombers were mad because the Riders won and some things happened in that game, etc., etc. I don't think there was a single narrative out there about the Bombers are done, the Bombers are old, the Bombers are shit now. Like, no one believed that after the Riders won Labor Day, so we can stop with that, please. As an aside, as an aside, I do think it can also be true that the Bombers are still an elite, very good contending team in this league, and B, not as good as last year. It's just the gap between them and now there was a lot of room to fall for them to remain elite, but still not as good as last year.
No, certainly. And it was the first thing Sergio said to me last week after Labor Day. He looked at me and went, "We get revenge in 6 days."
Yeah.
Like, and just completely deadpan. So what the message was from Mike O'Shea after the Labor Day Classic. All right, guys, we get revenge in 6 days. And that's exactly what it showed up like it just like it was electric. The crowd was loud. My cousin Mike was there, and he told me, he's like, I've never heard this building that loud. Like the fans were there for revenge, the Bombers were there for revenge, and as we like to call it this here podcast, is something we've taken from college football, Death Star mode, where you just go in and you blow them up, and it's over and it's done, and all the citizens of Alderaan have been vaporized.
Yeah, more or less. So it's different circumstances, but kind of like the Montreal game. Like the Montreal game, there was a scenario that sort of led to what happened there. This was just an extremely good team that was just on another level that day, and even if the Riders were playing at their best, they were not going to win that football game.
No, and it was interesting too, listening to Nye and the callers in the postgame show talking about how that Montreal game was so much worse. It was just like you came out of the Montreal game with Fine hurt, not knowing what Dalagala was, Harris hurt, going, oh my God, the sky's falling. How are they going to bounce back? Well, we've seen how they've been able to bounce back, proving they're far more mentally tough and better prepared than last year's 18-wheeler off a cliff team, right? So you're right. Like this was just, and it's funny talking about this with people saying, I don't know if the Riders were that bad. The Bombers were just that good in this one. And everybody goes, well, they gave up 51 points. Of course they were bad, but like
the other team plays too. Like
right. Like and to me, this wasn't like, you see those losses where like the Montreal game where you got turnovers, you got sloppy plays, you got bad mistakes where, Montreal maybe didn't play that good. You can't make that argument here. Winnipeg punted once.
Yep.
It
was a meaningless punt with like 40 seconds left.
Exactly. And like they could have kept the pedal on. Like they could have
just gone for it for shits and giggles to say they didn't punt once.
I think they should have, right? But it was one of those games that you look at your opponent and go, okay, the Riders are better, but they're not there yet.
No, and I don't think anyone had any expectations that they were there yet. As we talked about last week, had they won that game, we could be having conversations about where they are relative to those other the undisputed top three teams in this league. But they didn't, and so they're pretty much where we thought they were. They're in this jumbled mess that involves most of the other teams in this league now, probably except for the Ottawa Redblacks.
I would almost argue they still remain, and we saw this more when Harris was healthy early in the season. I still think they're kind of in their own tier.
Montreal may be in their tier too, I think. I think the two of them are kind of...
But Montreal seems to be regressing.
They are. They're in the same tier at the moment. I didn't say they're going to finish at the same tier.
Right.
But right now, I would say they're kind of in the same spot.
Right, where it can go either way. And I see a Saskatchewan team that's getting healthy again.
Yeah.
Like everybody they were missing basically on the offensive line was back at practice today. And they seem to be getting stronger, notwithstanding, last week's terrible game. Meanwhile, I see Montreal where, it's getting bad when the TSN crew's going. I think it was Matt Dunnigan that basically said, if they can't run the ball, they're not going to win because Cody Fajardo's not that guy.
Well, and as an aside, I wish they'd stop talking about this because Jason Moss has never run the ball in his CFL career when he's been in charge of an offense.
And you can.
So, let's not learn from that and,
Well, and that's it. To me,
that's not a knock against Jason or his offense. He's going to do things his way. It's just maybe we should stop expecting it and talking about it because he's literally never done it.
Right, exactly. And it continue. And this year, it's looking like it's going to be his downfall again with that Montreal team that seems to be regressing. And I think if you're a Rider fan, and even me as an outside observer here, you have to feel better about this team at 6-6 than at 6-6 last year.
Oh, 100%.
Like, it's just there's pieces there. Like the defense, with the exception of, let's face it. If I know Derek Taylor, friend of the program, was talking about the point differential of the Riders versus, say, Montreal, right? The Riders have just had two absolute stinkburger games.
Yeah.
Like they got
for the most part, they've been in every other game.
Exactly, especially the ones at home, right? So now, coming down the stretch, you've got some winnable road games. I mean, and of course, like at home, they're doing what they're going to do at home, right? That's why the fan support's here in the province. That's why, to me, and I've only been at the two Winnipeg games this year, which is more games than I've been at in a long time, actually. But I've been at the two Winnipeg games this year, and it seems like that energy's back in that building. You're at every game. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, it's gotten better as the years gone on for sure. I think it was a little timid at first because people weren't sure after last year, and there was certainly a desire amongst many for change. So I could understand sort of the timid start, but it's definitely been picking up as the years gone on for sure.
Yeah, and again, this is not a team that goes into Death Star mode. This is a team that plays hard, that tries things and is winning football games. And I think the key to that is, and you said it in the good, the bad, and the dumb, and got a little bit flack for it on Twitter. But I mean, Jake Dolegala didn't throw for 300 yards.
No.
But he didn't look like dog water either.
No, I mean, he was completely unremarkable. He was completely irrelevant, but that is, I'm not going to say a positive necessarily from that game, but it is a scenario where they didn't lose and they weren't bad because he made them bad. We've seen good quarterbacks for this team go into that environment and shit the bed.
Yeah.
Jake Dolegala essentially had a touchdown drive to open that game. Yes. And if that happens, that's a different football game, as we talked about. From there, the Bombers got, they kind of said, okay, we survived that opening drive. We took their first shot. Let's just end this now, and they did. He had one sort of weird fumble, but I mean, that's fumble luck, c'est la vie. He's still gone 3 starts without throwing an interception, which for a guy who's made 4 career starts is pretty remarkable. So, yes, he didn't win them the football game. Yes, he didn't necessarily show up and prove to be an elite quarterback in this league. No one's asking him to be. He came in and didn't lose his starting job. And that's really what I took from that game.
No, and I think, too, I don't know if you made this on the pod or the preamble, Joel, but you made the point that basically midway through the second quarter, you could tell the Riders just said, we're not winning today. Let's not put anything on film that people can see.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. Let's not get hurt. Let's not anybody explode their Achilles here. Let's get through this game. Let's get out of here. Let's not show any crazy looks on film. Because I know a lot of people were talking, the offense was too conservative in the second half. Well,
what's the point?
You were down literally, you were down 42-6.
I honestly would have put, it sounds backward to say, because yes, Jake Dolegala needs live reps still and etc. And it wasn't his fault at all. I still probably would have put Shea Patterson in sooner, number one, to keep Jake Dolegala healthy, and number two, if Shea Patterson can't play more reps in that football game, why is he on this team?
Yes. Yeah, because, again, you just know this isn't like last year's Banjo Bowl where the team tried to fight through adversity.
Yeah.
The adversity of grown-ass men pooping their pants and puking in garbage pans in what sounded like my absolute worst nightmare. Well, Jake Dolegala was being driven to Winnipeg by Craig Reynolds after he had a dozen beer on a golf course the previous day. It just, they were trying to battle adversity. This one was just, they knew they didn't have it. Nobody got hurt. You're right. It was super vanilla. It was super boring in that second half. We got to see our boy Sergio out there quite a bit, kicking some field goals. Of course, perfect for our boy. But I don't hate them not putting anything good on film. If you've got gadget plays or you've got looks that you want against Winnipeg, you've got stuff deep in the playbook you're going to bring out. You're not doing it while you're down 42-6. You're going to go vanilla. You don't want anybody hurt, right? How often do you see a guy get injured on a 3-4 yard out?
Yeah.
Right. Again, things can happen. It is football, but to all those criticizing Jake for saying, "Oh, he's way too conservative," they weren't winning that game. Why put anybody at risk?
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
I like that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing. So despite all this, we're not concerned about them. Everything's fine. Well, not everything's fine, but it is what it is, kind of thing.
Yep.
What matters?
Talk to me in 2 more games against Edmonton. If they drop the next 2, if this is a 3-game slide, then we can talk about panic.
Yes. So we are now into a scenario of, okay, if this happened, how you respond is what matters. And last time this happened, they responded with 2 just absolutely ridiculous wins against the BC Lions or Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yes.
It is going to be a much different matchup this time than the last couple of times they played the Edmonton Elks. Even though I know those games against the Elks were tough matchups for them because that's just what this team does. This time, I think I'm okay with a tough game against the Edmonton Elks. This is not the last time they played the Elks where they should have just beat the piss out of them. This is okay, the Elks, while still Elksy at times, are very much competitive now, are a very tough out, and are very difficult to play against. So this is one of those games where, okay, it's going to be difficult. You know, Chris Jones is going to bring some stuff. If they can survive, that's all that matters.
And honestly, Edmonton is quickly becoming fun as hell to watch.
Yeah.
Trey Ford, like I had a chance to watch the second half comeback of almost in its entirety for Edmonton. I was at the in-laws hanging out in their hot tub, supervising my 3 children while I was watching TV and drinking beer in the hot tub. But like Edmonton is fun to watch now, like with Trey Ford in there, and it seems as though them winning a couple games has galvanized them. You're right. There is no, I'd say outside, like I get it. Both them and Ottawa are at 3 wins.
They're very different in their points of trajectory right now.
Oh, 100%. Like Edmonton, and Edmonton's going to be motivated because suddenly now they're in a bit of a playoff race.
A little bit technically, yeah.
Right. I mean, but again, you go on a bit of a heater. You got Saskatchewan, which, let's face it, is a winnable game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You take on BC, moving down the stretch, they've got an opportunity. They've got a tough schedule, but they got an opportunity. They're playing some East teams, so they could potentially work themselves in a crossover. And let's not forget, much like the Riders playing Toronto last week of the season, Edmonton's playing Winnipeg, who's probably starting. I don't know if they're starting Drew Brown in that game at this point, right? Yeah. So they've still their backs are kind of against the wall, and the Riders can't take them lightly, nor do I think they will. I think last year's team takes them lightly and gets punched in the mouth. I think this year's team plays much better. I'm not going to say the W word because we're starting to realize just how powerful the Fraser curse is. I'm sorry, Toronto Blue Jays fans.
Yeah, I think, well, and I mean, here's the side of it, I guess, for the Elks is realistically they're probably chasing Hamilton, who I think is on a bit of an upper trajectory themselves.
Which I respectfully disagree with you on.
Well, yeah, and because they have the flip side of it is Hamilton coming down the stretch here now is to play Winnipeg, Toronto, Calgary, Saskatchewan, BC, and Montreal.
And see, that's why I think Hamilton's going to end up on a downward trajectory.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, next week, this week here, they play the Bombers. And I know that's tough, but it's in Hamilton, and the Bombers are coming off a big emotional win, which we've seen teams get caught in that situation before. So I'm not saying I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I'm not saying Hamilton winning isn't out of the equation there.
But if the spread was big enough, you take Hamilton to cover the spread.
Yeah. Toronto, they definitely won't win. Calgary, I think they can win that game, which may effectively put them in. Saskatchewan, maybe not. Who knows? BC depends on where they're at, and I think they can beat Montreal. So you're looking at, a couple more wins, which puts them at 7-11. So, I mean, there isn't that high of a bar left for Hamilton again. They don't have to run the table here to stay third in the East.
I find your argument fascinating. I would like to subscribe to your newsletter.
Yes, well, I don't have one. You'll have to check more at 3donation.com. Even though I don't write that sort of stuff.
Nah, you write the good stuff.
Do I?
I read it every week, and not just because I'm your friend.
I don't know if that means much.